Washington is broken, and a lot of it has to do with the uniquely American way that we pick our candidates. Oh, you thought everyone else across the world holds primaries the same way that we do? Nope. It's a tradition that pretty much only we observe, and there are 3 great reasons to change it.
Look around the world at other democracies, and nobody uses this crazy primary system.
Elaine Kmark is a professor at Harvard, a fellow at the Brookings Institute, and author of Primary Politics.
More and more congressional districts have become safe at any margin.
Meaning, you win the primary, you're a lock to win the general election too. So the first problem with primaries is they disenfranchise all of the voters who can't vote in the primary. We're talking tens of millions of voters, many of them simply independents who don't like either party. Live in New York, but you're one of the 7 million voters not registered as a Democrat? Our vote's about as relevant as an iPhone 4 charger. You still have an iPhone 4? No. New York's got so many Democrats, both the mayoral and gubernatorial races are pretty much decided in the primary, not the general. Or maybe you're an independent living in a deep red district like Florida's first. Once Matt Gaetz won the Republican primary, your vote in the general didn't mean much. And more of us keep losing our voice thanks to gerrymandering and our own self-sorting.
People have been moving to live near like-minded people. And so what that does is it creates a lot of very safe congressional districts.
The second problem with primaries, despite their huge importance, is they get minuscule turnout. With dates scattered all over the calendar, even eligible primary voters who are model citizens can easily miss the election. Turnout for primaries is often less than half that for general elections. Marjorie Taylor Greene won her decisive primary with only 43,000 votes, just 5% of the constituents she now represents. AOC, just 46,000 votes, 6% of her current constituency. And those primary voters tend to be more politically active and more partisan than average. Which leads us to the third problem with primaries. They push candidates to extremes and away from the center, where most of America sits on the political spectrum. That's what happens when you only have to win the hearts of the most liberal or conservative 1/3 of your district, instead of the entire district. And because we have fewer competitive districts now, most of those primary winners never have to appeal to the masses.
It produces a peculiarly hostile kind of politics, because suddenly a lot of these people who are getting to Congress don't believe in compromise.
Just ask the last pro-life Democrat in Congress who was purged by Chicago voters, or the longtime Colorado Republican knocked out of office by a far-right gun activist, or all the Republicans getting pushed out of Congress after they voted to impeach President Trump. Our polarized government is getting more hostile and more dysfunctional.
Purity of ideology matters more than getting a deal and getting it done. And they don't get it done. And that's very unfortunate for us. It's very unfortunate for democracy when compromise becomes a dirty word.
So, what's the fix? Since the Constitution says absolutely nothing about primaries, we could do virtually anything. In fact, primaries didn't even exist until about a century ago. Presidents like Lincoln and FDR and Teddy Roosevelt, they were all handpicked by party bosses, which makes this first possible solution, albeit quite controversial, one of the easiest. Ditch the primaries and just let a small group of politicians decide their party's nominee. I know, that sounds terrible on its surface. But in the past, party bosses have been able to keep extremists off the ballot. Today, not so much.
It would take out the people who are basically in it to be bomb throwers and not in it to legislate and to get things done.
Virginia Republicans just did this for their gubernatorial nominee, handpicking businessman Glenn Youngkin. Without a primary to push him further to the right, Youngkin won over the general electorate, ending an 8-year streak in which Virginia Republicans failed to win a statewide office. Possible fix number 2? Limit gerrymandering so we get more competitive districts. Congressional Democrats have pushed this for years with nothing much to show for it. But some state houses have handed their map-making duties over to independent commissions, which tend to produce more competitive maps. That makes the general elections relevant again, and candidates incentivized to consider all of their voters. And fix number 3, open the primaries up to everyone. While some of our largest states, New York, Florida, Pennsylvania, still have restrictive primary rules, about 3 dozen have adopted provisions in recent years to allow independents to cast ballots in primaries. Many of those states now allow opposing parties to participate as well, so nobody is ever denied a vote. The good news, if you want to change our primary problems, we don't have to wait for Washington for a fix. A lot of these reforms can be done right in our hometowns and home states. So maybe it's time we prioritize our primaries. And if we're not going to fix them, then maybe it's time to ditch them.